Hey, I'm Kira from Kira Derryberry Photography in Tallahassee, Florida, and these are my tutorials. And this tutorial is going to be on how to use textures in your images to achieve a little more depth and warmth in your final image. Recently, I was talking to a couple of my photographer friends here in Tallahassee, and we were talking about this sort of look, this sort of sunset, glowy evening look, and they were asking, how do you achieve that? And my answer is, for me personally, I achieve it with using a texture. Texture is not something that I use all the time. It's not something I use on like every single image that I post-process in, but it's definitely something that I use when I think an image could use it or call for it. And I've kind of trained my eye to kind of see where the image is needed and what images don't. For the most part, I do my processing in Lightroom. I take raw images and I adjust them to my liking, and I do any kind of retouching in Photoshop and finishing up. And I try very hard not to spend too much time on post-processing. That being said, this is something that takes a little more time to post-process, so I wouldn't recommend doing this for like every image you've got in a session. I am going to do this for this particular image because I think it would look cool, look a little bit better if we did. So let's get started. So I want to show you where we're going to end up. We are going to end up with this image, or somewhere close to this image. There's the image from the before. This is with some tweaking in Lightroom. Let me show you what it looked like straight out of camera. This is what it looked like straight out of camera. So you can see that I have enhanced the skin tones a little bit. I've adjusted the white balance just a smidge, and but yeah, mostly I've adjusted the curves, right? The tone curve in Lightroom, and not too much. I tend to do this same kind of adjustment on most of my images because I do like a more contrasty image with darker shadows, and I'm careful that I'm not going to clip any of my blacks or my whites, right? So right here, I've brought back some of the whites, which is the benefit of shooting in RAW. But yeah, so this image for me is ready to go into Photoshop so that it can have the texture applied to it and a little bit of retouching. So I've already queued it up in Photoshop here, I think. There we go. Okay. First thing I'm going to do is get rid of this annoying blade of grass and do a little bit of retouching. To do that, I am going to use my spot healing brush, and I'm just going to get rid of that. That's weird. I've also got like this weird line here. I think this is just a blade of grass that caused this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. I'm going to take my marquee tool. It's kind of distracting. It's, I'm sure, very natural and something that was actually there, but I'm going to use Content Aware Fill to see what happens here. If you're on your background layer and you use your marquee tool, you can select an area. You can hit delete and do Content Aware. Bing, it's gone. It was just distracting for me. All right, so now let's talk about retouching. I have really scaled back my retouching, and it's all thanks to frequency separation. Frequency separation is a way that you can retouch an image without losing the detail of the skin. I highly recommend it if you haven't tried it before, and I'm not going to have time in this tutorial to totally go through frequency separation, but all I did when I wanted to learn it was get on YouTube, like you may be doing now, and look for frequency separation tutorial, and you're going to come up with like 30. So I would recommend the shortest one and learn how to do frequency separation that way, and then maybe create your own action. There are frequency separation actions available out there to purchase if you don't know how to make your own action. But again, if you don't know how to make your own action, just look it up on YouTube. That's what you're doing. That's what we're here doing, is just learning stuff on YouTube. So that's what I did. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to run my frequency separation action. What it's doing is it's going to create a high layer that's going to have all of the textures of the skin, and then it's going to create a low layer that's going to have all of the tones of the skin, so the lights and darks of the skin. So I'm going to go to the high. I'm going to go over here to my spot healing brush tool, which is already selected, and make it a little bit smaller. You know, there are a million ways to retouch an image. This is the way I do it. The way I do it may change and evolve over time, as it always does. But one thing I have learned over time is that any new trick that I learn, I am super guilty of doing it too much, right? So when I learned about using portraiture, which I still use on a regular basis, imagenomic portraiture, I did it way too much, and I applied it to the skin too much. People look like plastic, and you know, I didn't even notice it at all until, I don't know, my eye just developed a little bit more, and I realized that's not what people look like. The same thing with like removing under eye bags. I used to go nuts with removing under eye bags. I myself have crazy under eye bags, and it's something that that I've always kind of hated. But when I remove my under eye circles when I'm retouching myself, which, by the way, don't retouch yourself, just don't do it. I look like some sort of weird Cabbage Patch doll. It's just like, it just changes the whole weird, way my face looks, the whole symmetry of my face. So anyway, I'm really just rambling now while I'm removing these little tiny blemishes on this girl's perfect skin. But it's just sage advice, and that's what you come to me for, right? Okay, so I've done a little bit of that, and I'm going to tone down. I don't want to get rid of the texture altogether, but I'm going to tone down this just a little bit, and I don't want to get rid of it. This is the patch tool. I don't like how smooth it made it, right? So I'm just going to take it and knock it down, fade it 50%. I'm going to turn this off. Sorry, Kevin. I will text him in a moment. Let's see here. Great. Okay, that's a little more pronounced. So I'm going to just tone it back maybe 60. All right, now I'm going to mess with the tones. So I am going to... See, I have to be quick with this tutorial because I got to get home. All right, so I am just on the low layer, and I am using the patch tool to lighten her up a little bit, and it's a little too much for me. Again, I want to tone it back. I'm just fading it. Clicking and fading. Right. Oops. Just find a lighter part of the skin there. Okay. Now, I don't want to spend too much time retouching. That's not what this particular tutorial is on, but I could do a little bit more. I probably will. I probably did in the final image, but for the sake of time and dinner, I'm not going to spend forever. See? Texting. Lots of texting happening while I'm doing my tutorial. Okay. All right. So, there we go. That looks decent to me. Oh, one thing I want to do is, this is a little dark under here, and watch this. I'm going to take... I don't want to lose it completely because that would look weird, but it's like there's like an orangeness to it. I'm going to take it up. That's way too much. I'm going to knock that back. Whoops. I'm going to knock it back like... Just play around with it until it looks good to you. 20? Sure. Okay. Yep. Before, after. Okay. It's just a little bit. It's just a little bit. I could do a little more, but I'm not going to at this juncture. All right. So let's flatten that. I'm back to a flat layer here. Okay. So this is when I'm going to apply the texture. That's what you came here for, right? So that's what I'm going to show you. All right. So Jessica Drawson is a creator of textures. She's amazing. I love her work. I'm very inspired by her work. She has been creating textures for years, and I have been purchasing them for years. So I highly recommend checking out Jessica Drawson's textures and her photography. Her photography is beautiful. This is from her third texture pack. This one's called Golden Child. I'm choosing this one because I like the tones in the image. It kind of already goes with the tones in my image that I've got here. I've got a little bit of green at the top and a little bit of like a red-orange tone at the bottom. And that, for me, that's what this texture has here. It's green, brownish, warm tones. That's what we're going for. I tend to use the textures of hers that are in that vein. But, I mean, look how many there are. I mean, that's just in the one pack. So I highly recommend you check her out. You can, of course, create your own textures. I've tried that. I don't like them as much as hers, but she's the expert, right? So I'm going to go with her. So I'm using Golden Child from Jessica Drawson. Okay, I've already got it queued up. I've rotated it already so that the green is on top and the purpley, reddish, orange, brown, whatever this color is right there. I'm going to copy it, paste it. All right. You're going to be quick, I think. Anyway, I say that. I'm never quick. Okay, so I've got a new layer now. I have resized it so that it fits over top my background layer. And I'm going to change this now to soft light. Okay, change that layer property to soft light. Okay, now it's way too much. It's way too much for me. So I want to take it back just a little bit. Well, more than a little bit, to about 50%. I would say a little bit more. Oh, 60. 60 is the number I'll land on. Okay, so now I've got that layer, I've got it cut down to 60, but you'll notice that while it gave me these pretty tones, it also gave me a lot of junk over her face and skin and background. There are times in certain types of photography that I do that I like a texture, that I like to have that overlay over the background. In this case, I don't want it. I just want the depth that this texture is giving me, the lights and the darks and the colors that it's enhancing for me. So if I turn it off, you can kind of see the difference there. I want to get rid of that. So here's what I'm going to do to get rid of that. I'm going to go to Filter. I'm going to go to Blur. I'm going to go to Gaussian Blur, question mark? Because does anyone really know how to say it? Is it Gaussian? Is it Gaussian? I don't know. But here it is. That's what that texture looks like with nothing blurred on it. I'm going to take it up pretty high because I want to get rid of the dust and the scratches and the brush strokes, but I'm going to maintain all those like painterly tones that it gives me. Okay, somewhere around 40%. You could play with this and make a decision on your own, but I say 40%. Okay, yay, look, texture's gone, but I still have the tones. Now for me, her face is like a little too warm, too much, right? So I'm going to paint that back a little bit, which is the magic of masking. Okay, I've put a mask on my layer. I've talked about masks before in my tutorials as when, you know, if you don't understand masking, it's something you really got to learn because it's just going to change your life. But masking here, when the mask is white over the layer, that means that the layer is being applied to the entire image beneath it. When it is black, it is not being applied to the image beneath it. Okay, it's turned off. So lights on, lights off. That's how I think about it, if that helps you at all. So what I want to do is I'm going to paint back her skin just a little bit with my brush tool. I'm going to make sure I'm selected on black because that's what I don't want the layer to be applied to this. And I'm going to take the brush down, the opacity down to about 50% because I do tend to like to be able to build using brushes rather than going at 100%. But see, I'm just painting over some of these tones in her face that I think maybe just in the shadows, just a little bit, I think maybe it got a little too warm. And the picture was warm to begin with, right? I kind of edited in Lightroom the color to be warm to begin with. So I'm just taking it down a little bit, but it still looks like it's being applied, and I like that, right? I don't want her skin to be totally unrealistic. This is a warmer than normal image because it's supposed to be sunset, it's supposed to be warm and very like fall or even summer-like, I guess, but I think that's good for me. I'm going to do it that way. All right, now I'm not going to merge it. Probably if this were my regular workflow, I'm going to merge it, but just so you can see all the things I'm going to do, I'm going to leave it on, okay, so that we can adjust it if we want to. Okay, couple of things. I'd like to do a little dodging and burning. So I've got an action that I created called Dodge and Burn Your Mom. And Dodge and Burn Your Mom, what it does is it creates a soft light layer, and it's going to give me a black and white brush, and I always take that brush down to about 10%. This is the way that I do non-destructive dodging and burning. There's a million ways to do these things, of course. This is the way I do it. You can use the Dodge and Burn tool, of course, but for me, this gives me a little more freedom or wiggle room, maybe. So I want to burn. This is a little hot for me. I'd like the attention to be on her face, right? So I'm going to go to my black, burn that down just a little bit. I don't want it to go totally flat or anything, but I am going to burn it down. And I'm going to do a little dodging and burning in her face, small amount, because I'm going to enhance those cheeks a little bit. Now, one thing I'm noticing is as I burn, anything that had a little red in it is getting real red. So I'm going to tone that out in just a second too. I I feel like I'm always battling redness. I don't know about you guys with your photography. I think everybody's got their things that get to them, but red in the skin sometimes gets to me, and I'm going to show you how I combat that a little bit. Okay, so I've done a little bit of burning where I want to burn. I think of where I want to burn. Oops, sorry. Where I want to burn, and now I'm going to dodge. I'm dodging places that I would dodge if I were doing makeup on somebody, right? So right under the eyes, that kind of triangle of the cheekbones, right over in the forehead there. But I'm burning where I would also do contouring with makeup, right? Blush at the chin, just around the cheeks there. Basically, you're highlighting cheekbones. You're burning in angles to make the face a little bit slimmer. She's gorgeous. She doesn't need anything. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm just going to do a little bit of dodging and burning. Okay? And I'm also going to do it to her hair. Again, this is not something that I do to every image that I post-process. This is something like if I see an image and I just want to kind of play with it and make it look a little juicier, that's what I'm going to do. It's my photos. I'm going to do what I want, right? Okay, so let's burn in a little bit of the shadows. I went with the white over the highlight areas of her hair, and now I'm kind of going in with the black and just getting in the shadows. And I could do this all day. Sometimes I get obsessive about that. Okay. Now, I'm going to zoom out. This is something I highly recommend. Zooming out gives you some perspective because we're zoomed in so closely when we're retouching, it kind of takes away from it. For me, right now, her face is just super, super bright, and I need to tone it down. And the other thing is I'd like to draw a little more attention to the image with some sort of vignette. So I'm going to add that too. I've got a vignette action that I created just using a gradient, a radial gradient. I'm going to run that. Okay. It applied it to the whole image. I don't want it over the eyes and the face too much, although I do like that it kind of toned down everything a little bit. I'll get back in my brush. I'm going to get down, you know, maybe 50% again. Bring it back. Cool. Okay, so I like this image a little darker with, you know, a highlight around the face. I can come back now and go back to my brush tool on my dodging and burning layer. Whoops. Who told me to put it on 50%? 10%, 10%. Build on 10 or 15%, right? 12. Okay. I'm just kind of evening out this a little bit. And let's burn that in a little bit. Okay? So that's pretty much it. I mean, I could get real nitpicky here, and oh, yeah, let's tone out that red just a smidge. Okay, that's the last thing I'll do, I swear. Red shift hue saturation. That's an action I created that just shifts the reds over to the yellow side a little bit using a hue saturation adjustment layer. These are all things, you know, that I've learned over time. Maybe one day I'll make an action set or something, but right now, these are just things that are working for me that I use in my workflow all the time, and I make kind of stupid names for them. But this one doesn't have a good name, so if you've got a good name for it, give me a shout, and maybe I'll rename it. Okay, like, you know, there's restaurants when like hamburgers are named for people. Maybe I'll do something like that. Give me a good name. All right, so all right, hue saturation. Just made a hue saturation adjustment layer. Look at this. I turn it off. You can see all the red in her skin. I turn it on. Her skin gets kind of more yellow, but the red tones out. So I don't really want it to apply to everything because I like a little bit of red in the image. So I'm going to turn it back on. I'm going to invert that mask so that it's black. Okay. And then I am going to come in and let me turn this back up. This baby back up. And I'm going to paint it in the shadows that I think are a little intense with the red. Somebody is very grumpy over in Grumpy Photographer. Okay, so there we go. I gotta get home. Gotta tighten this up. All right, so that looks pretty good to me. I could probably do a little more retouching if I wanted to. Let me turn that on and off, that hue saturation layer. See that? It just toned it out. And even if it's too much, just take it back. Right? And now I can merge it all. Okay, Command-Shift-E, that just kind of merges all my layers that are active. Okay, So that's it. That's the tutorial. I might do a little sharpening, but I gotta go home, so I can't bore you guys with sharpening. But I will show you the before and after. So here's the after, right? And there is the before. I think the before is actually pretty fine. You know, honestly, the whole session was great. We had great light. I did some adjustments in Lightroom, and I could just go and retouch some of these more beauty shots that I did of her and not do this whole texture thing. But for me, this was fun. I like doing art projects like this and giving an image a different look. So that's the after. That's the before. After, before, after, before. And this works for me. I like it. So if you have any questions, just leave it in the comments below. Again, the textures that I use are Jessica Drawson. Highly, highly, highly recommend checking out both her photography and her textures. And her tutorials. She actually has a YouTube channel, and she makes wonderful tutorials that she doesn't ramble on and on in like I do. So you should probably quit watching me and go watch Jessica Drawson's tutorials. But anyway, that's all I got for today. Hope it was useful. If you have questions or comments, leave them below, and I will see you next time.